Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Zeke-ollege football. I'm your host, as always, Zeke, and let's talk about Week 8. Very interesting weekend, and had a couple marquee matchups. The two big ones coming out of the SEC, it was Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia versus Texas, but we'll talk about both of those in a little bit. I want to get into, just at the start of things, uh, just sort of saying a quick thank you for sticking with both the channel, the radio show, and really everything so far. I really enjoy doing this and being able to just being able to talk about the things I'm passionate about. So, I couldn't do it without the wonderful fans out there, uh, the Zeke-ollege football fanatics out here. So, thank you guys for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. Also, there is more football on tonight. Uh, so recording this, as you most likely know, on Tuesdays at 3 o'clock. Yeah, there's more football on tonight. Got Sam Houston at FIU and UTEP at Louisiana Tech, and those are at 7:30 and 8 respectively. So if you want midweek football, you got midweek football. We're very lucky that we're in that time of the year. But without further ado, on the topic of CUSA, I think we start off talking about Week 8 by going into some of the CUSA results, some of the things that we saw on Tuesday and Wednesday. And we'll start off really in chronological order, I would say, with the best game that happened on Tuesday night. No, it wasn't the Sun Belt matchup between Troy and South Alabama. No, it wasn't Middle Tennessee beating Kennesaw State 14-5. It was a double overtime thriller in Las Cruces, where New Mexico State eked out a win over Louisiana Tech. And you know what? I stayed up to watch that game, and it was a great game. Um, it was a back and forth affair. And in terms of uh, the reasoning on why Louisiana Tech lost this game, it came down to special teams. There was no way that Louisiana Tech should have lost this game. They had a 4th and 4 from the 9-yard line of New Mexico State with 3 seconds left in the game. Went to kick a game-winning field goal. It was blocked. They had special teams miscues all game long, and that's really what did them in. Just issues on special teams, and they end up losing a crucial game, dropping to 1-2 in conference instead of being 2-1 in conference. If they're 2-1 in conference, they still had a shot. Now they don't really have a shot. But it's a great win for New Mexico State in their hopes to become bowl eligible. They're 2-5, can't afford to drop another game. They got a couple tough ones on their schedule. Um, you know, they have Texas A&M on the road. That's probably going to be a loss there. And then a home game against Western Kentucky. But the other three are winnable. So if they can pull an upset against Western Kentucky, or God forbid, against Texas A&M, I know they've beaten SEC teams in SEC stadiums before. Then they have a shot at making a bowl game. For Louisiana Tech, I mean, 2-4, just really underwhelming stuff here. They got a way tougher schedule. Some of the top teams in the conference are teams that they still haven't played yet. I can see them getting 5 wins maximum here. You know, UTEP, that's a winnable game. Kennesaw State's a winnable game. But on the road at Arkansas, I see that as a loss. On the road at Western Kentucky, I see that as a loss. Versus Jacksonville State, probably a loss. And then the real crucial game here is at Sam Houston. They could potentially win that depending on one thing. And that's actually my next point. The Sam Houston offense just cannot compete without Hunter Watson in the lineup. This was a game that happened on Wednesday. Hunter Watson has been playing great for Sam Houston. When he's in there, the offense is working the ball down the field. He left the game at halftime, and when he left, Sam Houston was uh, just down 17-14. Still a very manageable deficit, something that they could absolutely overcome. And then they just sort of fell apart in the second half in terms of yardage. Uh, Two fourth quarter touchdowns for Western Kentucky iced that one 31-14. And for the Hilltoppers, they are fully in play for a CUSA title match. They're 3-0 in conference, and one of two teams that is 3-0, along with Liberty. Jacksonville State also undefeated in conference play as well. So, a little bit of a race, but it's teams starting to pull away there in the CUSA. And then finally, just a sort of feel-good story. UTEP gets their first win of the season, first win in 357 days, I think it was. Um, yeah, they were a very rough program, but you know what? They're not eliminated from a bowl eligibility just yet. They're staying alive. And Scotty Waldron, good win for that program. But poor FIU. I mean, they had two different quarterbacks go down with injuries during that game. Had to rely on the third stringer. He couldn't really lead the offense that well. I mean, you feel bad for him sort of getting thrust into the game like that, but two interceptions and 37 yards just isn't going to cut it. So, good win for UTEP. FIU looking more and more likely that they're going to miss a bowl game here. Um, just some tough stuff over in that game. But we're going to move on and talk about some MAC football as well. I love me some action. And this week certainly did not disappoint in that facet. Um, some good games in MAC football. And we'll start off Toledo with a nice defensive win over Northern Illinois. And I was going to say for the Huskies, they knocked off Notre Dame. Everyone was talking about Northern Illinois for a couple weeks there. They're ranked at one point in the season. Now they're 4-3, and including being 1-2 in MAC play. I mean, that's just how Maction goes. You know, you, you never can really tell. If you went into this season and you were like, I know who the best team in the MAC is going to be, you would probably say Toledo or Miami of Ohio. I don't think anyone really was guessing Western Michigan at the start of the year, but hey, they're the only team without a loss in conference play right now, 3-0, and then they beat Buffalo on the road. Good win. Hayden Wolf is playing well. I mean, we might be seeing a little Western Michigan resurgence here because I was gonna say they used to be a team that I would look forward to watching their games. Then they changed up their uniforms, their color scheme. I wasn't a huge fan of the shift to brown instead of a black and gold. But Western Michigan, 4-3, 3-0 in conference. They're playing good football. And talking about directional Michigans, uh, I mean, if you boil down Maction into its like purest form, you'll get what's going on or what happened in that Eastern Michigan, Central Michigan game. So for the first quarter and a half, or really most of the first half, Central Michigan looked terrible. I remember I looked at one point and they had -1 yards passing, and it was at the 2 minute warning or 2 minute timeout in the first half. They scored two quick touchdowns, including a fumble return, and then Eastern kicks a field goal to end the first half. So it's 16-14 Eastern Michigan at the end of the first half. Then the third quarter happens. Touchdown, field goal, touchdown at the start of the fourth. And all of a sudden, Central Michigan's up 34-16. You're like, Eastern Michigan, what happened? 22 unanswered points to end the game. 38-34. Eastern Michigan wins. A crazy game. And for Central Michigan, that's another close loss in conference in back-to-back weeks. They lost to Ohio 27-25 the week before. They've had some close wins against Ball State, San Diego State. The best way that I can describe Central Michigan right now is they are a team that is as good as their opponents, but not significantly better than them, not significantly worse than them. They play to the level of their opponents every single time. There's worse out there. There's worse than that. But having a losing record at this point of the season's got to be pretty a tough pill to swallow there for Jim McElwain. Moving forward, let's talk Sun Belt. Louisiana, the Ragin' Cajuns knock off Coastal. They are the first team to reach bowl eligibility in the Sun Belt. Um, you know, bit of a surprise this season. Not the biggest surprise to the Sun Belt. ULM did have a bye week this week. And then another team staying undefeated in conference play, Georgia Southern. They knock off JMU. Now, JMU finds himself with not one, but two conference losses at this point in the season. It's a little dicey for the Dukes. Again, they're getting used to a new coach. It's Bob Chesney instead of Kurt Signetti. But either way, a 1-2 record in conference is a little unfortunate. Some of the top teams, or what we thought were going to be the top teams in the Sun Belt, taking some key conference losses. Coastal Carolina struggling, James Madison struggling, App State having a rough season. Texas State took a loss as well in conference play this week. They lost to Old Dominion. So some of the teams that we thought were going to be good were not good. And some of the teams that we thought were going to be terrible are really overperforming as well. Now, moving on to the American, the biggest thing other than sort of harping on Army, Navy, I feel like every single week I'm talking about Army and Navy, but they're just winning. And they're playing good ball over there at those military schools. Well, maybe not Air Force, but we'll get into that. The only thing other than that to talk about in the American is Memphis. They knock off North Texas, who was previously undefeated. North Texas having a really good season with Chandler Morris at the helm. And good game, close game. Memphis already bowl eligible. They do have that one conference loss to Navy. But if they can continue to win, which they might be able to pull out some sort of conference championship appearance. But yeah, Memphis, not dead yet. And for North Texas, tough to take a loss there. But they also only have one loss in conference play. So if they win out, they could make some noise and try to make a case that they should be in the conference title game as well. And moving on to the Mountain West, UNLV looks really strong against Oregon State. The Beavs just did not really get any momentum going throughout that game. It was firmly controlled by UNLV. Um, you know, just seemingly another team that is just taking control of their destiny, right? UNLV already bowl eligible as well. There are four teams that are undefeated in conference play right now in the Mountain West. UNLV is one of them, and the other one is one of the other ones is Boise State, a team that UNLV is playing this week. It's a Friday matchup, 10:30 on FS1, I believe. If you're interested in Mountain West football, that game is absolutely must watch. No ifs, ands, or buts. That game is must watch. It's on CBS Sports Network, actually. Scratch that, not FS1, CBS Sports Network. Uh, it's Boise State at UNLV, 10:30, CBS Sports Network on Friday. That is a crucial game, especially for Boise State. If they win that game, they're pretty much in firm control of not only the Mountain West, but also of who will be that uh, group of five representative in the playoffs. So certainly a big one on Friday. And, keeping up some of the feel-good stories, Colorado State, they beat Air Force for the first time since 2015. They had lost every other matchup against them since that time. And then they also get their first road win since 2002 against the Falcons. So, I like what Jay Norvell's doing with that program. Uh, they have, and I believe I've gone over this in a past episode, they have a relatively easy back half of the schedule. Their schedule is very front loaded with the games against Texas and Colorado and Oregon State. But, you know, in this backstretch, they play against New Mexico and Nevada and Wyoming and Fresno State and Utah State. And those, to me, seem a bit more winnable than uh, other schedules for the back half. Like, let's look at San Jose State for a second, right? San Jose State, another team, they're 5-2. They're also having a good season so far under Ken Nui Matalolo. But if you look at their back half of the schedule, they play at Fresno State, at Oregon State. They host Boise State. They host UNLV, and then they finish off the season against Stanford. So out of those games, if they lose the Fresno State game, they better hope that they can beat Oregon State because I don't see them competing against Boise or UNLV or Stanford right now. Maybe Stanford honestly might be the most winnable out of that back four, and that's saying something. That's a Power Four team. So Colorado State with a very advantageous back half of the schedule, and especially they don't have a single conference loss at this point. So they could try to make a run towards that Mountain West title game, especially if a team like Boise or a team like UNLV takes a conference loss. Now, San Diego State is also undefeated in conference, but I think that's more due to the fact of who they've played in conference. They've played against Hawaii, and I believe they've also played against uh, a struggling Wyoming team as well. Moving forward, let's talk. Oh, wait. Before that, I want to mention one thing. And, it was a team that I kind of wrote off a little bit within the first little bit of the season. They lost their game in week 0 against Montana State. And then they just looked really rough against Arizona. They looked rough against Auburn. and they looked rough against Fresno State, but they've really rebounded their season. New Mexico won their last three games, and then they're looking forward to that game against Colorado State this weekend. So good for Bronco Mendenhall to sort of turn this program around a little bit and really get some momentum building there. But let's talk ACC. Miami, Clemson. I would say they're the two top dogs right now. SMU is also still undefeated in conference play, but uh, it looks like the Miami and Clemson show, if I will be honest. Pittsburgh also undefeated as well, but I would say Miami, Clemson, two top teams, and they both won, and it was pretty convincing. Clemson beats Virginia by 17. Miami, while they let up some points against Louisville, they had firm control over that game. It was a very back and forth affair, but it was always Louisville catching up to Miami and never really the other way around. So, certainly the two top teams absolutely performing like we thought they should be. Uh, Also important to note, Duke on Friday night beat Florida State for the first time in their program history. They've played them, I believe it was 23 times before that, and finally got their first win. So just another feel good story, and then finally little bit less of a feel good. We've been doing a couple, positive stories. This one a little bit more negative. Boston College, their defense has really taken a hit in the past couple weeks of conference play. They lose to Virginia, they lose to Virginia Tech. Big game against Louisville this week to try to salvage something. Uh, that game happening this Friday. So BC really needs to turn around on defense if they want to win. And if they want to even make a bowl game, they got a tough back stretch here. They play against Louisville and Syracuse and SMU and Pitt, North Carolina. Uh, have to get two wins out of that group in order to make a bowl. So something to look forward to. But I would say one of the teams that had the craziest weeks, uh, or one of the conferences that had the craziest weeks was the Big 12. They have two teams that are currently leading the Big 12 that are very surprising, let's just say. Some people might call them flukes. Some people still don't believe in BYU or Iowa State. But I'll tell you what, BYU, Iowa State, they're both good teams. And what good teams do is they win. And they both won. Was it ugly? Yep. Yep, it was ugly against two lower rung teams in the Big 12 right now. Oklahoma State having a rough season. They were 3-3 going into the game now 3-4, 0-4 in conference. UCF was 1-2 in conference play, also 3-3. And both BYU and Iowa State escaped late. For BYU, a thriller on a Friday night. For Iowa State, late on Saturday. But you know what? I'll tell you what. Big 12 football is producing some really close, really good games. There's a lot of parity in the Big 12. But I want to talk a little bit more about that BYU game. It's because I saw the light, and then darkness came back to ruin everything. If you followed along with my biased team rankings, where I went through and said what my favorite teams were, you know Oklahoma State is my second favorite team. And man, what a roller coaster of a Friday night this was. Because you start off and you see Garrett Rangel. Now, was everything pretty with Rangel? No, not everything. I'll tell you what he did. He opened up the offense. 6 and 9 for 51 passing yards, a touchdown and a pick. But on the ground, added another 77. Broke off a couple big runs, made the defense fear the threat of quarterback run, which opened up Ollie Gordon to have his best game so far this season. Over 100 yards, two rushing touchdowns. Gordon also got banged up a little bit in this game, but Garrett Rangel looked like he was moving the football. It looked like the offense sort of reminded me of last year, you know, where it looked like Oklahoma State even had an offense. But on the big run by Rangel, he goes down. His shoulder gets injured, and then back into the game trots this old man, Alan Bowman, who's just terrible. Just terrible. Now, to Oklahoma State's credit, they tried their best to win with Alan Bowman, and they almost did. They score with a minute 13 left, but BYU still has two timeouts left. And with 10 seconds, BYU scores a touchdown. Awful tackling on that final play, but BYU escapes. BYU wins. And Garrett Rangel, likely out for the season. Um, from what I saw, they said that he is going to be out for a while, is what they said. So it's going to be a whole lot of Alan Bowman for the rest of the season, and that is just disastrous news if you're an Oklahoma State fan. But back to some more positivity. Colorado. I mean, a lot of people sort of wrote off Colorado. They had a shaky performance against North Dakota State, who's a very good team. Just beat the number one FCS team, South Dakota State, in a huge rivalry game. They had a shaky performance against North Dakota State to start off the year. They, you know, didn't look very impressive in their second game either. Uh, Losing to Nebraska 28-10. People were like, "Oh, they're just like last year. They're frauds." They go and they win and they win and they win. People starting to second guess it. Take a loss to Kansas State. Close game. Ranked team. But you still take a loss. The thing about good teams is even if they lose, it's about how you respond from that. How do you respond to a loss? Because teams that lose but can't rebound the next week to get a win, teams that lose but don't play harder the next week to get a win, are bad teams. Colorado this year is not a bad team. They turn around and they thwack Arizona on the road, 34-7. Colorado's a good team this year, and they are one win away from making a bowl game. Got Cincinnati coming up this week, Texas Tech on the road in a couple weeks, Utah, who's playing terribly, at Kansas, who's also playing terribly, finished the season against an Oklahoma State team who, again, is playing terribly. Buffalo's could have a sneaky good season. Potential 8 win, 9 win team maybe. But people aren't ready to have that conversation yet. It really depends on health, though, for them. Travis Hunter's been banged up the past couple of weeks. So, again, take it with a grain of salt. But it's already better than the record last year, and we still have about half a season left to play. So, good story over there in Boulder. And then finally, for the Big 12, uh, Baylor beating a Texas Tech team that was some getting some respect from the media. A Texas Tech team that is getting votes uh, in the AP poll takes a loss to a Baylor team that looked pretty lifeless. They were undefeated in conference up to this point, 2-4, but they respond, they rebound. 5 passing touchdowns for Sawyer Robinson, or Sawyer Robertson, pardon me, and they win the butt game. Yeah, Baylor University, Texas Tech. See what I did there? Yeah, it's funny little uh, name for this game, but it's not funny as this performance. Good performance by Baylor. Let's move on and talk about some of the teams in the Big Ten. Oregon shuts out Purdue. Not surprising. I mean, Purdue, people were thinking maybe they'll play Spoilermaker. Not this game. Indiana's the real deal as well. Indiana is absolutely the real deal. They demolish Nebraska 56-7. It wasn't close. Dylan Raiola throws 3 picks. No. Indiana under Kurt Cignetti is a completely different team than any Indiana we've ever seen. Illinois beats Michigan in the Big 12, or sorry, Big Ten's only ranked versus ranked game. Uh, just old school football. Emphasis on the run game. Altmaier didn't really have to pass the ball all that much, but big on defense and just sort of making making it count. They got a tough game ahead of them though. They're playing against number 1 Oregon. Uh, so it could be a bit of a tough game for them, but Illinois is looking good. And then a couple shout outs. Maryland beating USC by a single point. USC having a really disappointing year. That is a bunch of close losses for them. 1-4 in conference, 3-4 overall. Just disappointing stuff. And I'll tell you what, their largest loss was by a touchdown. Lost field goal game against Michigan, field goal game against Penn State, single point to Maryland. Seems like they're really having to adapt to uh, the longer travel times. So that's I was gonna say the long travel games, so like the ones at Maryland and the ones at Minnesota are games that they're losing. We'll see if that sort of plays a factor more. But I'll tell you who it didn't affect: UCLA beating Rutgers, getting their first Big Ten win. That's a feel-good story for the Bruins there. Sean Foster getting his first conference victory. They needed that. after a week one win, losing five straight. Uh, Good performance by Ethan Garbers over for the Bruins. And finally, we'll touch on the SEC before getting into a little bit of news and then hitting up the AP poll. Uh, for the SEC, couple big story games. Let's start off with Tennessee, Alabama. I remember where I was in 2022 when Tennessee beat Alabama for the first time. I was calling a Bryant football game. I was in the uh, right outside of the press box at Burns Stadium. I looked at my phone and I saw uh, the final score, and I remember thinking, "Wow, that's like a once in a lifetime thing to see uh, Tennessee beat Alabama." Because in the whole time that I had been paying attention to college football before that, I hadn't seen that. This time, I'll be honest, it didn't feel as special because it did just happen 2 years ago. It's not against Nick Saban's Alabama. It's against an Alabama team that lost to Vanderbilt. But this time I was in a Buffalo Wild Wings when I saw Tennessee beat Alabama. So a little bit of a different vibe, but 24 to 17, the Vols win in Knoxville. Crimson Tide with two losses on the season already, and two conference losses at that. They are in very unprecedented territory right now. Um, if you look at the SEC standings, Alabama is below teams like Texas A&M, LSU, Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri, Texas, Vanderbilt. They're below Missouri and Vanderbilt after that loss. That's not something that I think anyone would have predicted um, by week 8, and I couldn't be happier. That's amazing. Georgia, they are scary, this Georgia team, because their defense, the pressure that they were putting on Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning when he got subbed in, they dominated. Like, just flat out, they dominated Texas. The score looked so much closer than this game was. It was 23 nothing at the half. Uh, it was a great performance by the Georgia defense. Interception, three fumbles forced by this Georgia team. Jalen Walker, three sacks. Michael Williams, two sacks. I mean, they just put relentless pressure on him. Seven total sacks on the quarterbacks. And it was all downhill from there. Texas didn't play like the number one team, but there was really one storyline going into this that people are talking about after the game. It's not that the Georgia Bulldogs dominated Texas. It's about this PI call that got overturned after fans threw trash on the field. Now, trash being thrown on the field should not impact calls. I think that's something that doesn't need to be said. I think that's something that everyone should agree with. But I think it sets a really bad precedent. And I really hope that this precedent does not continue because it's just childish and it's immature, really. Throwing trash on the field. What are we doing here? Pisses me off. And then two more things before we'll go into a little bit of news. Oklahoma, a really surprising result for them. Uh, they struggled at the start of this game. Uh, I remember I looked up on the screen and I said, "What? The game just started. How is Oklahoma already down 21 nothing?" And I look and I see Michael Hawkins Jr. had already thrown two interceptions. Oklahoma got embarrassed by South Carolina on their home field. That's what happened. They got embarrassed. So in comes Jackson Arnold again. He got benched previously for Michael Hawkins. Um, he played fine. Nothing special. Played fine. But 35 to 9 is pretty unacceptable for a proud program like Oklahoma. And it seems like they agreed. Brent Venables fires Seth Luttrell, so they're going to be hiring a new offensive coordinator. I'll keep you posted when that gets announced, who that will be. And finally, uh, my Missouri Tigers on homecoming, they got a come from behind victory against Auburn. Brady Cook left early on in the game, had to go to the hospital to have an MRI done on his ankle. Drew Pine comes in. The offense looks horrible. And all of a sudden, we get an alert that Brady Cook is coming back. We see him warming up on the sideline. We were like, I thought he was gone. He'd gone to gone to the locker room, hadn't come back for a while. We thought he was done for the night. Comes back and uh, leads a scoring drive. They get the ball back and leads a 17 play, 95-yard game winning drive. Now, Brady Cook, so far this season, has been pretty maligned by some of the fans. He's missing deep throws. Um, really looked like he was holding the offense back. But a performance like this is a performance that fans remember. It's a performance that fans really care about. And it shows that he bleeds black and gold throughout. He is a Missouri kid. He really deep down cares about this program. And I feel like he deserves some apologies from some of the Missouri fans. And I think I've seen a decent amount of apologies given from these fans about that. But let's get into some other news. Two coaches have been fired already this season, and it's for two pretty underwhelming teams up to this point. For starters, the first head coach fired was Mike Houston over at ECU. East Carolina, one of those teams that didn't really see the results they were looking for out of Houston's whole tenure. Um, you know, they lost to Army this week. I don't think that was the straw that broke the camel's back, though. I think they were planning on getting rid of Houston. at some point this season already. 27 and 38 just was not going to cut it. Um, but they have been 5 and 14 in the past two seasons so far. So again, just not the results they're looking for. And now you see they're going to have Blake Harrell, their current defensive coordinator, take over as interim coach for the rest of the season. And then not too long after that news broke, we also got word coming over from Southern Miss that Will Hall was also fired. Again, another coach that really underwhelmed. They lost 44 to 28 to Arkansas State. He was, you know, 7 and 6 in his second season, but went 4 and 15 after that. So it's really unfortunate for him. And then they're gonna have Reed Stringer take over as the interim coach over there. So two coaches fired so far this season. Out of those two, I would say that Houston was a little bit more surprising. But both of them make absolute sense to me. But let's go into the AP poll for this week. Starting off, we see Oregon, now the number one team after Texas's loss. Georgia, all the way up to number two. And I think that's fair. They played like a completely different team. They played like a team with a chip on their shoulder. And I would expect that to still continue. Penn State, Ohio State, staying at 3 and 4. Um, Texas drops all the way down to 5. Miami stays stagnant at 6. Tennessee gets up to that 7 spot. Clemson rising. Iowa State falling. Iowa State again had that close game, but the two teams in the Big 12 that are undefeated, Iowa State, BYU, neck and neck in the polls, 10 and 11. Notre Dame at 12. Indiana getting some more respect at 13. They rocket up 3. Alabama, huge drop off, -8, all the way down to 15. It's been a while since we've seen Alabama in double digits. Um, we got Kansas State rising up a little bit. Boise State, they didn't play, but they did fall by 2. Uh, Pitt rises up. Illinois rises up. Missouri, despite a win, drops by 2. And that's something I kind of want to talk about here. This is not the first time that this has happened to the Tigers. This is not the first time that this has happened. They dropped spots after a win against Vanderbilt, who is now a top 25 team. They don't even have a picture for Vanderbilt on this website. That's how surprising this is. Top 25 Vanderbilt, but no picture. Interesting. Um, but yeah, Missouri dropping points with a win again. A little bit frustrating. A little bit frustrating for the Tigers, but they got a crucial matchup heading against Alabama this coming week. They want to rocket up into college football playoff contention, SEC title contention. A win against Bama could be just that catalyst that they're needing. And then finally, looking at the receiving votes, teams that really uh, aren't getting a lot of respect. We see Liberty getting a single vote. They're undefeated. I know they've had a joke of a schedule, but you'd think that maybe more than one vote. Um, UNLV with 5. Again, you'd think they would get a little bit more love there. Some of the pollsters very high on Syracuse as well as Washington State, the uh, the number 26 ranked team, just missing. Although they do have half of the votes that a team like Vanderbilt does. So, oh, that's big. Whoa, hold on. Uh, broke 41 minutes ago as I'm recording this. So it started, actually broke this news while I'm recording this. Indiana quarterback Curtis Rourke out indefinitely with a thumb injury. That could change some things. Uh, yeah, that could definitely change some things. So he had thumb surgery, but wow, different quarterback for Indiana. That might be the reason that they might catch their first loss on the season. That is tough. Okay. Well, either way, we will keep you posted with as much college football news as we can. But with that being said, if you liked the video, drop a comment down below, drop a like, drop a follow, subscribe to the channel if you feel so inclined. Tell your friends about Zeke-ollege football. I'd love to grow the channel. My goal is by the end of the year to hit 25 subscribers. I know that doesn't seem like a big goal. I'm only two away, but if you tell your friends, we might be able to get that. And then with that being said, have a great rest of your day.